Welcome back. We are live for another episode of Growing with My Fellow Growers. I'm your host, Jack Greenstock, joined as always by an amazing panel. I'm going to pass it over first, like I normally do, to Spartan Grown, who's got a smoky room over there. Cheers, Spartan Grown.
What's up, guys? Just had a big bong rip. Spartan Grown. You can find me on Instagram at Spartan Grown, all one word, no spaces. Or you can shoot me a message on Instagram. On Instagram. You can do that on Instagram, or you can shoot me a message through email at spartangrown@gmail.com. Either way, you get a hold of me.
Happy to have you back as always. You can find me at jackgreenstock47@gmail.com if you're one of those email only people, as well as Spartan always reminds me. Next up, Brandon Rust. Welcome back.
What's going on, guys? I've been super busy, always busy, man. It's crazy around here. I'm Brandon Rust. If you guys don't know who I am, for the listeners, if there's new people in the chat, you can find me on IG as well at rust.brandon. And you can find links to Bokashi Earthworks, my company, and my farm in my bio.
Sorry, I was just muting my YouTube on my phone so I could get my live chat up. And that's just a reminder for anybody who's here, the 8 of you so far, like Vero HTX, the first one I see. Cheers, everyone. Cheers to you, Vero. Thunder Dan and a few others here with us already. Just always a good reminder to click on over to that live chat so you can see all the messages. But next up, as always, Matthew Gates. Welcome back.
Hey, it's Matthew Gates. I'm an IPM specialist. For those who don't know, that's integrated pest management. And if you'd like to find more of my content related to that, especially with cannabis, you can find it on my YouTube channel, Zenthanol. You can also find it on my Instagram channel, Sync Angel, also on Twitter at Sync Angel.
Glad to have you back, as always. Looking forward to the conversation we're about to get into, but we have next Kyle Breeder. Welcome back.
Hey, everybody. My name's Kyle Breeder. I typically specialize in cannabis breeding with feminized seeds, feminizing plants, and making feminized seeds. If you're looking for that kind of thing, I do have a website, which is the letter P followed by breeding.com. You can access, I don't have much on there now, but I do have a new drop coming soon, but there is some material on there now. And if you're looking for anything I'm doing, predicated breeding on all social media platforms, I am doing a giveaway every Wednesday if you'd like some free gear. And other than that, feel free to reach out if anybody ever has any questions. I'm pretty friendly on there.
I've seen you being very active on there with the giveaways and keeping in touch with people, so I can vouch for that as well. Next up, we've got the breeder, one of the breeders I'm growing their gear right now, the American One.
Hello, Jack panel, everyone in chat. I'm the American One on the YouTubes and the American One _with_18s on the IG. And it's good to be here. I hope everyone had a great week. And I'm happy to be here.
Happy to have you back. We were talking a little bit before the show about the hurricane going on. We just wish everybody well in those areas. Stay safe. It is the anniversary of Katrina. I just Googled and confirmed before the show. My wife mentioned that earlier today. So hurricanes are serious. People do die. If you're in an area where you think you might have to evacuate, then that might be the safest thing to do. But who knows? Some people that live there have better ideas what to do there. But on the grow topics, I'm growing some of the American Ones, Amy Aces, right now. And I'm about week 4 in flower. It's starting to get a little bit of a more citrus smell than I was expecting. Some lemon, like limey terpenes coming off of there, and pleasantly surprised. It's very, very dense for how early it is in the flower. It is looking like it's going to be a fantastic yielder. So I'm definitely looking forward to that. Do you ever find any citrus in the Amy Aces? The American One?
Yeah, also, what's the parental lineage of that when you get a chance to, after you answer that? I'm kind of curious.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I got a new screen on my device here, and the touch is a little bit weird right now. So I apologize if I'm a little slow on the unmute. But yeah, there's a couple times people have gotten like pine sol-y kind of smell. And it's constantly changing. So it might fade out by the time you're done flowering. It's constantly a change in smell in there. The parent is Cheesequake male with a bag C clone that I've kept for like 8 or 10 years now. And I really don't know what that one is, but it does have an OG type structure, but it's really not OG type flavoring on it. It's like I get a lot of hash and like a new blue stickball smell on the mother.
Like the handball?
Yeah, handball, not tennis, but a handball.
Dude, it's funny you say that because earlier it was very rubbery in flower,
Yeah.
and like new shoe is what I would describe it as, like that
Right,
rubber.
right. Some of that new kind of rubber, some kind of rubber. Yep, yep. So, and it changes too. That one changes as well. So it's always interesting. But yeah, it expresses a lot of different flavors. But a lot of times by the end, it has a hashy and even the cheese comes out a lot, like UK cheese kind of flavor. I've been told. So
I smelled some cheese notes earlier in there, and I was thinking it was just maybe like in my own head, because I knew that there's some cheese in the lineage with the cheesequake, but I
But,
don't know. It does
you
kind of
know,
change day to
still-
day.
yeah, yeah. So it'll be interesting to see how it turns out all together at the end.
I'm very excited for it. It's next to a Donny Burger, which is a GMO, cross to GMO, cross to Lario GF8. I'm also interested in a GMO cross that Brandon's
That's
growing,
gonna
that
be
Bicket
good,
OG,
yeah.
that cherry pie, that GMO. It looks fucking fantastic. How's that smelling over there, Brandon? How's the garden?
It's good, man. The heat has been something. The climate out here has been difficult, but we're pulling through it. I think our next thing is getting a boron filter, because even with our RO system, it's not filtering out the boron. But yeah, other than that, man, just doing our thing. The Bicket OG is a dope ass plant, to say the least. It outgrows everything. It outpaces everything, but then it takes a little bit longer to finish. But you do it right, you can push that thing pretty hard, and it throws down. And we have GMO as well. We have that Skunk Master Flex Cut, and I've grown them side by side. And that GMO cherry pie will do twice as much what that regular GMO does. It's just like we have a third of our greenhouse of that stuff right now, and we decided that's one of those things that we're going to be running during summer months. Right now what we're doing is finding varieties that work for different seasons, and usually we're like, oh, we need something that works well for just this area. But it's not just the area, it's also the climate that consistently changes, and being able to find varieties that can deal with that. That SFV OG does really, really well. That GMO cherry pie does really well. That we're growing. So right now we're just kind of dialing everything in. The GMO is good, man. I like the GMO crosses. I like the structure of the plant. If you can get that structure where you get nice, big, like it stacks really hard, like the nodes, and they're fat, but they're spaced out so they don't stack up on top of each other. I really like that type of structure, because it leaves a lot more area open, so that way like it's less difficult for like small tight places for botrytis to form, or any type of thing like that. So
I definitely agree with you on the structure. I like the stretchier stuff, the bigger node spacing. Some stuff like the OGs and things like that can tend to fill in that gap, depending on how heavily it can fill out and the strain and everything like that. But I threw a poll in the chat for anybody who hasn't voted. There's 66 live with us, and it looks like we've got 29 voted, so about half of us are there. I just threw up a few random topics like heat management, blackout management, because the whole hurricane thing, there's other reasons that people might be having blackouts, like heat, for example, in California, rolling brown and blackouts and things like that. More garden updates is a popular one right now. It's tied for first place, and then IPM as well. If you guys have any other topics you'd like to hear about, you can tag me on the @CheapHomeGrow account or Jack Greenstock. That way it will pop up in red for me to see, and hopefully we can keep this on a topic that the people here are most interested in. So as far as garden updates, yeah, I definitely agree with you. The GMOs stretching and things like that tends to lead to a beautiful structure on the plant. And I'll pass it over next to Kyle, and let's hear what you've got going on over there in your garden.
Yeah, right now I have a bunch of plants that are in I guess essentially week 18, because I flipped them all once they all got pollinated. All the other girls I have, which is a pollination between, a collaboration between me and Green Bodie. He sent me, as you guys already know, his hazy kush fen pollen, sent me like a whole bunch of that stuff. So I basically tossed it in my whole 4x8 with all the cuts that a couple that I've already had, like New England rock candy, and just a couple of the other ones I have, but I also have some new stuff that have some new crosses that I made that I really enjoy, and that root beer by GMO that me and Gene sent me with the collaboration between Skunk Tech. But once they all got pregnant, I basically just flipped it back to 18.6, and I already have like massive clone growth going. So I'm at the point now where I'm basically going to harvest all those cuts, put them in a dome, and then harvest all the plants and let them dry out completely until I can get them to like a, almost powder form. So that way the actual bark on the seed is really dry. And I tend to have really good luck in that scenario. But yeah, so I have the Limarilla from Brendan. I have that root beer by GMO that has the hazy kush, the New England rock candy. I have a a variety called strawberry sugar cookies, which is an Afghan cherry by a master kush cross that I did. I have the Mac in general, the breeder's cut, Mac's cut, capped cut, that's got some of that hazy kush pollen in it.
About that hazy kush plant too. We just took like a couple trays.
Yeah,
into production. We're gonna try it out.
That's pretty cool. He sent you a cut, huh? He's a good guy, man.
Dude, that dude sent me like 40 cuts, man. He sent me like lemon skunk dog, dog walker, Obama kush, the Tanzania kush or whatever it is that he posts. He sent me sour OG, GMO times Hills OG, and something else. I'm missing one. Yeah, he sent me a bunch of stuff, and they all none of them died, which I usually kill shit that comes in the mail.
Yeah, he's a good guy, man. That's what I love about him. And I think I was telling Jack there or somebody before, but like for a while I was reaching out to a lot of people in the industry just to collab and try and like bring some more stuff to the community. And it's what we should be doing as a community anyways, is like working together. And there's so many other people, I'm not going to name drop, that like wouldn't even like didn't have the time to respond to me, even though it blatantly shows that they read it. And it's like, but him and like some other guys were just like completely all about it's all about the community, man, and just showing love, and what goes around comes around, and people who have that type of mentality, it's just a good thing to see. And it's just a lost culture in a lot of
There's
people.
a lot of greed and competition, unfortunately, and not a lot of people looking for that spirit of collaboration. Another person who I just saw who is part of that collaboration is Spartan Grown. I just saw your breeder's cut being crossed to something on 2020 Mendocino's page. Somebody was talking about, I didn't know 2020 has autos. And I was like, dude, they've been doing them for like at least 2 years. I've been hearing about it now. And I scrolled back through the page to like 2019, and there's them pollinating one of their autoflowers, like new projects coming soon. And so it's cool to see. And big fan of 2020 and the whole group over there. All good people from all accounts. All the times I've dealt with them tend to be great people. And Spartan, just curious if you're still growing that Snow King cut yourself, or if you've just handed it off and have it kept other places. And general garden update from you. How you doing?
Thanks, Jack. Yeah, for sure. I still have Snow Cane. It's a mom plant, but I am seeking to. I've got 2 seedlings going right now. They're still young. Of the they're F2s, but they're calling them version 2s. So on those F2s, I'm hoping to find something better than the Snow Cane. I mean, that's the point of it. If I don't, I'm not going to keep. I popped 2 of those. If neither one's better than my Snow Cane, then I'm just going to keep hunting. They gave me, I think it's 15 seeds of those. So, and they're all fem. So I should be able to find out of 15 seeds. If I don't find one better than Snow Cane, then I don't think it's there. But I fully believe that I'm going to find something better. Just from the description that they gave me, is like they use Snow Cane on the one side to bring the structure and the frost, and then on the other side they brought the terps with it. So if it's better terps than what I had, but with the same structure, I would be extremely happy with that.
I'm looking forward to seeing. I think honestly, I've heard a lot of good things about the variety that comes out of F2. There's like usually an outlier, and that to me would imply, even if it's like fems, you might find something that is just really unique and special in that F2 that you might not see at the F1. So hopefully you do find something special in those 15 seeds, but if not, then you still got your cut. So it's a
for sure.
win all the way around.
Yeah, I don't really have a loss, and that cuts out there. It was passed around to everybody that participated, at least hopefully everybody. And they have it obviously because they're still breeding with. They've got another cross that they're doing sparkle face. They crossed with snow cane. No, they didn't cross sparkle face. They made sparkle face with it. I can't remember. It was snow cane times. Oh, it's the spice, which is a biscotti cross. And I have that going outside, so I'm excited for that. And I also have 2 of Brandon's limelights going. They're seedlings right now, but they're looking good. And then, yeah, I'm going in reverse order, so it's hurting my head to do that. And then, let me see what else do I got. Oh, okay. So then I have in my veg, I'm setting up. It's like a big experiment. I'm fucking around. I'm playing with how many plants I can do in a sip container. So in my veg, I have 2 planters with 4 GG4s each in it. So it's really 8 plants and 2 planters. And they're taking up a half of a 4x4. And then the other half is I've got a Spartan glue by itself like I normally run. And then I have the other planter is 2 Spartan glues in the same pot. So, and right now the 2 Spartan glues in the same pot are way taller than everything else. So that's already a pain in my dick, but I always like to do this to myself. I don't know why. And then in flower, I've got, let me see, I got a GG4 going, a Spartan glue going. They're about to come down. And then a sour D still left in there. And then I have my bliss bud, which that's my funnest thing right now. So bliss blood, I've got 3 phenos. I've pretty much eliminated pheno 2 because I found a male flower and a few seeds in while I was trimming it. And so then I'm down to pheno number 1 and pheno number 3. Pheno number 1 was a bud structure more like my closest strain would be snow cane, real dense. Well, maybe like Gorilla Glue 4, kind of like that kind of a bud structure. But then the other one is the pheno 3 is more like sour diesel, almost like growing cattails. And between the 2 of them, it's interesting. The one is, it takes a while. Like it was like almost a month. So after a 2-week dry and then a month onto that, I started getting this really good berry terp that never smelled the entire grow. It just came out in the cure. It's one of those crazy weird things. This other one, the one that's my favorite right now, is the pheno 3. And shout out when my joint went out, but it's almost out anyway. But shout out to Detroit River Rat. He handed me a joint of his sour D, but I passed him this pheno, and I don't really have a way to describe it other than if you smoke sour D, it's like the diesel part of sour D, but it doesn't have any of the sour, and it's gas. So it's like I call it the gassy pheno of the two. Because it reminds me so much of the sour D, which makes sense because that's one of the parents. That was the mother plant. So I'm really excited for it because when I smoked it, even before it was cured, it went longer too. Of all the 3 phenos, it went the longest. And then it went an extra like 2 weeks past the other 2 phenos. And then it also, the high was like, it's a creeper. You smoke the whole joint and you're like, well, that didn't do much. Then all of a sudden, a half hour later, you're high as hell and you don't realize, you don't know why. And then you're like, oh yeah, that joint is just now finally hitting me. And it's one of those ones that's kind of lasts a little bit too, which I really liked. So
I haven't seen that in a long time. I was telling someone probably like a month ago, I was like, whatever happened to that creeper weed that we used to smoke that would just hit you and you know?
I think it's the tie. I don't know, but I think it's the tie. And when I picked the other side is it's a pineapple tie, which was what was a pineapple tie, and they hit that with what was it?
Sour
strawberry. Yeah, sour strawberry. But I picked out of that out of those stock, I picked the one that was as most tie leaning as I could find. It wasn't any berry, wasn't any sour. You know what I mean? It was all spicy, is how I described it more. And so I don't know. I think the weirdness, is coming from that Thai lineage, but I don't know.
I would agree with that fully, man. When I smoke that, once in a while I tap into that landrace Thai that I grew, and it's like I'll just be sitting there extremely calm, and the next thing I know, I'm just like in this different world already. So I don't know.
I'm excited. I haven't really had a whole lot of opportunity, I don't think, to grow from, that I knew were like legit Thai genetics, but I do have some
Dude,
stuff from
I've got some stuff. Okay. I don't know if he's not in the chat right now, but Captain 420 is what he goes by on here. But I've got him right here. He had a whole bunch of these, but he picked these out in the wild to Thailand before he left. And these are just Thai times Thai. You know what I mean? Wild Landris Thai. I've got about, I don't know what it looks like here, maybe 25 to 30 seeds here.
Did he meet up with you guys just recently?
Yes.
Like a couple days
Yeah.
ago? I was talking to
Yeah.
him. Yeah.
Okay, because I recommended he get a hold of you because he was looking into
Yeah.
organic growing. I said, you just need to get a hold of Brandon Rust.
I think.
Yeah, those things are legit because those seeds are like, because I know I could tell from almost the camera, but they're freaking massive, dude. They're like,
It really depends what part of Thailand, because there's highland and lowland Thai. They're very different. Some have tiny ass. Somebody showed me a dime, or there was like a whatever seed challenge, how many seeds you can fit on a quarter or something, and some of them were Thai, and they fit like 100, near 100 plus or something.
I was going to
crazy.
say these ones look. Hold on, let me hold them up again. But they look.
The ones I have are small.
To me, they look smaller than what I normally
by
see.
Thai.
oh wow, yeah, mine are massive.
I want to interject and say that in that cannabis genome research that I've talked about in the past, where they're trying to look for the origin, they do make the point, and I also made the point that like oftentimes, and this is true for plants in general, smaller seeds are associated with being more able to like expand and invade new territories, whereas bigger seeds are generally not the case for kind of obvious reasons. And I wonder if the small seed phenotype in cannabis, or at least in like more natural populations, kind of had these effects and help to kind of broaden, and then those that establish maybe get bigger and bigger seeds. So I think that's very interesting.
That is interesting because, of course, in wind currents or water currents could carry them further.
Yeah, Skunkman Sam had a thing where he talked about like how many seeds weigh to a gram, and one of them it was like a Chinese hemp variety. It only took like 7 or 8 seeds to make a full gram because they were like so fat, like huge ass seeds. And then there was another one, I think it was a Thai variety, that there was several like 1,000 to make a gram. So there's a huge variety, and I think like Matthew alluded to, maybe the cultivation might favor towards the larger one. If it was Chinese hemp, they had thousands of years cultivating and using it for a specific purpose. Maybe it was for feed or like fishing bait and things like that. So they wanted bigger seed, or it just naturally evolved. I know Dr. MJ in the past has mentioned for many millennia, many farmers just selected the larger seed because they thought it was a healthier one, because bigger the better, right? So they just went with the bigger ones for a long time. So that could play into it. And there's a lot of things that definitely play into it. Brandon, I want to send some to you because I have some from some Thai stick from the 90s, and then some hand-selected Highland and Lowland Thai from one of my mentors, I guess, here in San Diego. And it was that jar that I talked about that he opened it up and he still had a bud from the 90s, and it's still super spicy. So like that showed me that I think beta caryophyllene sticks around, and maybe some other smells in cannabis can last a long time.
I have some of Kyle's Highland Thai that he sent me that I still haven't gone through yet. And then I have the NL5 Thai.
Oh wow.
By that Dave gave AK Bean Brains gave me on IG, and he always sends me stuff, and so he hooked me up with like the Williams Wonder times Lime OG, which is strange because the Lime OG actually came from a friend of mine out here from Oklahoma, Mick, and I know that plant gets huge. And then there are some other ones, the Durb Lime, which I haven't tried that one, haven't sprouted that. Durban Poison times Lime OG.
I completely agree with you about that, Jack. So those 2 plants that are on my feed from like when I first met you guys, those 2 Thai plants that I did grow, I kept the sticks because they were like canes, and I was gonna like use them forever. And when I still rub that, and it's just been sitting out in my closet as like a regular stick, when I still rub that stick, I still get Thai flavor from it, which is crazy because it's just been out in the elements doing nothing. So it sticks. It's really weird.
Yeah, I've been hesitant to popped those Thai seeds that Kyle gave me because I watched his story and I watched those things just continue to grow for like well over 100 days. And then I saw the end and I was just like, oh, that seemed like a lot of work for.
Yeah, it's definitely, it's for indoor cultivation. You probably have to go straight into flower mode to actually make it work and not be like struggling and trying to figure out what the hell to do with it. It's just, yeah, it multiplied by, I flowered it out at 2 feet and it ended up being like 12 feet long. So that's an 8 multiplier. You know, it was like, it's just stupid.
But outdoor, I bet those things get massive.
Oh, huge, man. Huge.
You just
And I got
let them
some
go fully.
Yeah. And I have those crossed into Kerala. I put some autoflower into that. I have like so many crazy Thai crosses. I have like rock candy by Thai. Just because I didn't know what would come from taking something so pure and then crossing into like modern. I had like some modern Kush into that Thai, and I don't know. It is exciting. I can't wait to get some land to do something with it.
I heard there's a lot of THCV in the Thai stuff, so that's interesting because it's got properties that supposedly help with cancer. It's got properties that suppress appetite, which, my God, does the U.S. need that?
There's a product called Skinny Weed in California that implements the THCV as well as humulene, I believe, is the other appetite suppressant terpene that is found in cannabis. That because like there's some times where I won't get the munchies at all. Like I'll use some stuff and I was about to eat and then it just suppressed my appetite. So I do think that it can show up in a variety of things. I know Subcool stuff was known, like Vortex, JTR, Jack the Ripper. The other one though, Jack's Cleaner too, was known for having the THCV. So it's definitely interesting. Another thing I was just thinking about earlier, Brandon mentioned the seasonal change and how he's going to start looking for varieties that do well in certain seasons. Like Thai might actually handle heat really well. It might be giant and really unwieldy, but it might just be able to handle a lot of heat and maybe even humidity during those rainier times and things like that. There was a guy, he works for Sunday Goods and The Farm, who were featured on Growers Network's Can of Cribs, which I think Spartan's crew is going to be featured on there soon if they haven't already been. But he talked about how in Arizona they have like monsoon season and then they have really hot and dry seasons. So they have different strains for different parts of the year. And it really works extremely well for them. And it also offers you more variety for your patients and things like that. So it is a dual benefit, but it's something that you have to learn with a new setting. So I'm curious, what are some of the strains that you found that are doing well in the heat so far, Brandon? Is there anything else that you're looking to try?
Well, we know that the GMO and GMO cherry pie do pretty well in the heat, and also that SFV that we ran. But we have a lot of other stuff that we're going to run. We're going to run all that stuff from Bodhi that we have. We just took cuts of that, and we're getting ready to go into cool season. So we're going to go back and run, I think, more of some of the stuff that we know does really well that we can get really big, like the Mac V2 and some of the other stuff that we have in there. I think we have a lot of stuff, but we're looking at the different varieties. That's why I have that testing box too, just to, we always want to try to maximize our space, and it's different at such a large scale with the type of greenhouse that we have. One of the things we're looking into is these like 25-ton or 50-ton diesel mobile AC units that during the hottest months of the summer, if it's economic, enough to be able to cool the greenhouses down. What we're able to do in wintertime, we're able to get to keep our greenhouses like obviously way cooler, so we can have our lights on all the time, our supplemental lighting during wintertime. And then we also, one of the things that I was thinking about is we have our heaters. The heaters will click on if it gets below 74 72 degrees, either, I can't remember, it's between there, and they're propane heaters, and so that's pumping out a massive amount of CO2 during the wintertime. And then one of the things that we're doing is we're adding a lot more plants per square foot, and then we're doing way heavier pruning. That seems to really help increase yields. Because
What are your temps
What's your-
peaking out at, Brendan?
And what's your plant load? Like how many plants per square meter?
So we started off with 5 plants for every 4x4, and that's approximately 1 yard of soil. So we have 22 sections equating to, I think, a total of 85 feet. And each section, each 4x4, and it's divided by like a PVC pipe, right? Because we're in the fabric beds, is 1 yard of soil. And so we started off with 5 in the beginning, and we're like, this, you know, it was wintertime when we did it. And so we had huge fucking plants. So it was all right. But we wanted to do less veg time, obviously, because we don't want to have to spend a month in veg, you know, maybe like 10 days would be adequate. So we started doing 9. But when I'm looking at overall canopy, after defoliation is done, I can see that there are a lot of areas that could still be filled in. So I'm gonna try 13 next. So I'll have a 9 setup pattern with a die, like a 4 section in the centers of that 3, 6, 9 row. We're going to try that setup, but I have a feeling that we're going to end up with probably, probably around 20 plants per 4x4 with a shorter veg time.
20 plants in 4x4.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's like basically like the old school screen to green, you know, just a lot smaller plant, shorter veg time, so you can flip quicker and fill out all those spaces even with the fairly heavy defoliation. One of our former members, Can Grow, experimented pretty heavily with the number of plants per 4x4. He had 4x4 tents, and he was using rock wool cubes and doing like a flood and drain tray. And he had like, I want to say sometimes 30 plus in 4x4, but they're like single plant cola straight up in a small tent. But it's very interesting. You can go back and look at his stuff. He's not really active on social medias anymore, but there's crazy possibilities of how many plants you can fit, especially if you don't have a plant count like you don't have in Oklahoma. So you have that benefit.
We have really good starts, right? If we're starting off good, we could have a 10-day or 14-day veg, and those plants are going to get real beefy. You know, we can train them all still. It's just being able to have the proper timing to be able to go in there and prune everything is like, you know, what we're seeing is that scheduling. You just got to have your scheduling like down. And if you have everything on point, I think that we're going to increase our production without having to have, you know, huge, like we can create, like, dude, the plants that I have right now are still kind of a little big, in my opinion. I think that they could be a lot shorter and still produce the same. Just, you know, that's, I'm not seeing a huge difference between plant height and yield. You know, I think it's all about the timing and just making sure everything's kind of dialed in.
Anything at the bottom.
That's the domestication phenotype, basically. I think we talked about that earlier too. Getting it shorter, stouter, and then getting the parts that you want to grow like big or voluminously, and then not really worrying about the other stuff so much.
Because there's some varieties that I like will even approach differently when it comes to, you know, how much we're going to prune off the bottom, because I know some stuff is going to create lowers that become really dense too. And if you take all that stuff off that specific variety, it might you might potentially be losing, you know, a percentage of that total harvest yield of that variety.
It's definitely something you have to learn from strain to strain, cultivar to cultivar, whatever you want to call them. It is a learning process, no doubt. And Kyle, you unmuted there for a second. I didn't know if you wanted to jump in.
No, I'm just hitting buttons back.
No worries. Yeah, it's definitely one thing one of the OGs told me back when I was beginning growing was anything, if you see these people with like grows with really, really long bare legs at the end where they like got like several feet of stalk and then like their buds are up top, that's like all wasted time in veg, right? Because if they would have just vegged for a shorter period of time, they could have flipped and then had roughly the same yield. Because if you look at usually their canopies, and this is an unideal situation. I mean, obviously sometimes people grow big ass plants and they yield very well and they're not stripping the whole bottoms up. But I think people do tend to over veg or maybe remove too much off the bottom, but it does vary strain to strain. One person I didn't check in with yet so far as one of our cannabis growers is the American one. How's your garden doing? What are you growing? Anything new going on over there or exciting?
Sorry about the delay. I pretty much am still, I got a whole bunch of those chocolate in the small in veg right now. And I have a couple of big plants in flower. Nothing too new. I have 2 of those chocolate feminized seeds out of 6. I got 2 plants come up, so that was a little disappointing. But the chocolate OG from AK Bean Brains, every one of those popped up. So that's where I'm at right now. Yeah, and I still have that mutant one. It's still going, still alive. It hasn't shown sex. I don't know if it's gonna be able to make sex parts, but
The forever bush. That thing is just going to spiral and spiral until you just decide to give up on it, I think. I don't know if it'll ever flower or produce anything. That thing was
we'll
quite
see
the
what
mutant.
happens. Yeah.
It's separated at this point right now. You put it outside in the sun and it kind of did its thing for a little while.
It's still growing. Yeah, I got fresh pictures if you want to see them.
I guess we could use an update if you have it on hand, if you can find them quickly. Or whenever you have them ready, I could share your ability to share screen or whatever.
Yeah, hook me up. I'll go right to them.
Matthew, do you have anything going on in your garden right now?
Yeah, actually, I was super happy to find that. And this is not cannabis related, so maybe this will be a little bit of a palate cleanser. But I have a very rare dragon fruit cultivar that was given to me by some people at the California Rare Fruit Growers Association and their San Diego chapter. This has probably been maybe it's been 3 years actually, dang, at least since I got it. Yeah. Well, 2 of those years did not feel real, but anyways, I had this for a while, and it was kind of growing in sort of stasis. I knew that I could take more time to sort of really grow it out, but I didn't have a whole lot of a plan or space because I was growing other plants at the time. But now I've found that I've started to give it a little bit more water because it's a cactus like plant, it is a cactus. So I was giving it a little bit more water and a little bit more sun, and I positioned it a little bit differently in the backyard, and it's starting to really ramp up in growth. And I'm just kind of excited about that because, for those who have had dragon fruit, a lot of people are familiar with like a sort of a whitish flesh fruit or a reddish or a very deep red, in fact, flesh fruit. But this one's yellow, and also it's also kind of I described it as heirloom. I'm actually blanking on the name. I feel really bad because the one time I could actually talk about it, I have forgotten it, but I have it somewhere in my folder. But the cool thing is that it has sort of like, I don't know if they're like Glochidia or whatever, but like those little thorns that are like very, very fine, very, very minute. It has those on the ridges, which is kind of something you see taken out in like typical domestication cultivars, because of course they're a real hassle to deal with. So yeah, I'm excited about that. And my loquat tree is still producing a ton. My grapevine is growing large, and We still get the glassy wing sharpshooter on that, but yeah, that's my update.
Glad to hear it. That's a Big Jim's local, right? Another San Diego local.
That's correct. Big Jim's. I'm glad that you were reminded of that. Yeah.
I'm in the California Rare Fruit Growers Association, even though I haven't partaken in any of the scion swaps. I think it's interesting and awesome to see all the cool and unique shit that people grow here. And maybe someday, I guess there's so much just these people are growing out there. I'm happy for them. It makes them happy. They share. You participated in it, and it's like they have a lot of knowledge to share and be learned from. And that's where like not Swami Johnny, what's his name? Johnny Caniseed found the whole root year clones in sand tech from some fruit growers YouTube channel that he was watching or something, and it works really well for him. So cheers to Johnny Caniseed with that. Spartan Grown, it before the show, you said you got a free shirt. You're rocking it right now. I gave you a compliment on it. I think it looks pretty badass. It's a dank shirt. Who'd you get it from? And I think I see Clio on there. And I think Clio's a pretty badass place. I'm probably mispronouncing it. Maybe Clio.
I always say Clio. I don't know, but Clio Cultivation buddy out there. He had his 11th anniversary bash. He has a cup on Friday, and then on Saturday, it's just a big blowout bash. I was there Saturday. It's usually really busy the first day, and the second day it's chill, and that's what I'm about. And yeah, we had a good time. We went out there. I went out with my buddy Baked Pone from the Michigan Bros Grow Show. He drove, so I didn't even have to drive. That was awesome because it's like 2 hours. And we got out there, and I don't know, we might have been, it was kind of quick. We were there for maybe 5 hours, maybe. But it's, you know, I people stopping me before I even get in the facility, you know, so I was just like feeling like I was getting pulled 100 directions, but I had a great time. You know, of course I've missed people like I always do, but I got to talk to a lot of people too. I got to meet a lot of people. It's always cool to put faces to names that you see in chat. You know, I really got to hang out quite a bit with Detroit River Rat. It was pretty fucking awesome hanging with him. He hooked me up with some of his sour diesel. In fact, I smoked the joint that he already had pre-rolled of it, and I was fucking feeling pretty high before I even finished that joint, which is a pretty rare thing for me. So that's a big thumbs up from Spartan there, Detroit River Rat. I like that. But yeah, it was a great time.
I love hearing when people get to meet up with the members of the community, make it feel a lot more real, because it really is there. And you're a figurehead of the community. You're on so many different shows. It's like when somebody runs up to you, it's not like, oh, I know you from Cheap Home Grow. It's like, I know you from GML or Michigan Bros Grow Show, or, you know, any number of shows that they could have seen you on. So it's cool for a lot of these people to get to finally meet you, and they realize you're a real person, you know, just like any of the people listening. You like to grow your own.
And it just fucking, I was able to gift out I got these little small, like little gram. It's not small, that's how they sell them in the dispensaries, but I like the 5 gram ones. But I had the little 1 gram, I don't know what you call them, syringes, dental syringes, and full of RSO. So I was able to just pass them out to a lot of people because, you know, that's my passion. I've talked about it before. That's kind of, I've just healed so many people with that. I didn't heal anybody. The fucking plant heals so many people with this RSO, this full spectrum RSO, that it's just, I love to get it out there to people who, you know, when I hand it to somebody and they like look like they don't, you know, never had it before. That's my favorite. That's my favorite because I want them to, you know, that little vial I gave them will last them a fucking year. You know what I mean? At a tiny dose, you know, and I just know that's going to fucking work. It's going to make their life better. So every single one of those that I hand out and they try to give me money, I'm just like, don't worry about it, man. This is why I do this shit. You know, I just want to get out there and get people turned on to the positivity of the plant, because I don't care what anybody says or anybody tries to brainwash people. If you're sick and you're hurting and you try something and it fucking works, all that other bullshit is out the window. And that's the power of RSO.
I think that's the power of a great caregiver who's cultivated some clean cannabis and has extracted it with passion and given it to somebody free of charge. That is healing. Just the gift, the feeling that they got when they got it, even before they took it, the feeling of gratitude immediately, whether they even say thank you or not. Most people, I think, when they get something that they want, are going to be very happy from it. So that little burst of happiness is a dopamine hit. And when they go home and they get medicated and aren't aching and having pains, and they sleep better, and they eat a nice meal, and they have all those things, those benefits. I do think that you deserve some of that credit in that healing. So I think that, shout out to you, Spartan, for helping those people in the community and everybody who's gotten a chance to try some Spartans. Good medicine out there. He sent a good question in the chat from Kula J29. How do I get rid of leaf rot in veg? Saying bacterial infection on my leaf app using Jax and cocoa. And that's from Kula J29.
Obviously a question for me, right?
That's what I was thinking.
So I actually did see that comment as well. I wanted to go back to it because I wanted to take a look at it a little bit more in detail. But I mean, first I would just ask to like confirm that you know what you're looking at, because we don't really know the pathogens very well. And I've actually been getting a lot of pictures lately of sclerotinia in cannabis, which looks like a lot of other fungal pathogens, but it kind of like, it looks like a how do I put this, like a great, usually it infects the stems and just kind of like kills the stem from like one wound point up and down. It travels and it like coats the stem in like a white powder, kind of like powdery mildew in that way, but powdery mildew wouldn't look like this at all. So I asked that because I'm not sure how they know what they know and if they're actually dealing with a bacterial pathogen at all. Not to like question anyone's competency or anything, but it can be very difficult to really tell.
Well, especially not just to add to your point, because I have probably incorrectly diagnosed things in the past because cannabis resources and websites, unfortunately, are not perfect right now at this point. Like you might go to a website that has great information that is accurately going to identify something, but you also might go to a website that is misidentifying it, or you think it is one thing that looks like something, but it's something else that looks similar to it. Especially as a newer grower, I could definitely see that being the case. That's why I wish that they could somehow send us pictures, or I don't know if we could maybe track down their Instagram or something to see and confirm with some photos, because that was going to be my question. Usually when I'm in these situations trying to help a grower out, you can actually ask for a photo of it and then go back and forth and provide a little bit more feedback. But I'm curious, Matthew, if you have any more thoughts on that before passing it to the rest of the panel.
I got a question from
Matt.
Can I ask you a question? But I also want you to hear your answer with this and what you're talking about and what Jacko just said. How do you personally feel about that app that you take pictures of these symptomatic problems and it gives you basically what's happening? And do you think that's kind of vague or?
So I mean, there's a ton of apps that actually do this. There's a lot of software programs that are using sort of these optical like analysis software to do this. And I'm 10 years ago, I was a lot more, I wasn't skeptical that it would get better. I was just not very, very dubious about the efficacy, and a lot of people would admittedly say so. Nowadays, for bigger things, pathogens can be a little bit difficult. Some of them are just inconspicuous, so it just won't work that well, and you just got to know that. But some things I think are a lot more conspicuous visually, demonstrably so. And for things like insects, I've actually seen some pretty good, at least to like the family level sometimes, or the genus level. But there's going to be, especially with insects and particularly also with microbes, there's going to be things that are not going to be useful for you as visual data, especially because, especially with microbes, you're looking at the damage profile, really. You're not actually looking at the pathogen itself. So you could be dealing with one of a few various strains that might be really important to consider, which you would definitely not know visually. Or you're dealing with something that just does the same kind of damage and looks practically identical, and the pattern that the software picks up isn't going to know the context for you.
Yeah,
So that's
going to
what I think
reference
about that.
its algorithm, whatever photo it has. So like, let's say it was overfeeding in that, for example, like something from this disease caused it to have like a yellow leaf or something, and the app has seen that yellow leaf before as being overfed with something. It might say that's overfed, but in reality it is reaction to a pathogen that has similar damage. As just one simple example of how that could fail, but it seems like it's getting better. And in this case, leaf rot, or is that what they asked?
Yeah, they said that the app said it was leaf rot, and I think that's probably why you asked the question, because I was talking about veracity. And I just don't know if it is or isn't that myself. If you did, but let's assume that it's the case. If you do have some sort of a bacterial infection and it is systemic, for example, that's going to be really hard to deal with. There are some really interesting research coming out that uses like biocontrols or biologicals, even systemically, or their compounds. And I think that will become a lot more usable and a lot more like, I guess you would say like refined. But I don't know of any that aren't like systemic toxins that you wouldn't really want to be using. This also is true for like fungi. Some pathogens are epiphytes and they live on the surface, like powdery mildew. Some of them will dig deep into your plant tissues, into your xylem channels, and there's not really a lot of great ways to deal with that.
There's some other bacteria that that can help with that are also endophatic. I think there's some strains of Bacillus subtilis. There's some strains of Bacillus hemilocutaneous.
Aphasions.
Yeah. There's
But like, what would they do though? Like, it's hard to know because pathogens are so different.
Brandon, can you pull your mic a little closer? You're fading out some.
Oh yeah, sorry.
I do agree that exclusion is one example, but maybe not curatively, you know.
Yeah, I'm not sure, but I do know that there are a couple of strains. I think I'd have to go back through some of the papers that I have because I can't think of it right off the top of my head. But I think there's a couple of different Bacillus species that might be able to enter into the plant tissue as well, to live on the phyllosphere. But I'm not sure their modes of action. You know, I'm not sure exactly what chemical compounds they're producing that would be. You know, again, because it gets so deep into the science and the actual biomechanics of how all these things work.
Yeah, I think it's like Matt was saying, the exclusion. If you have that Bacillus subtilis already occupying the space on the plant, then those pathogens can't get in there. You know what I'm saying?
But if they're already in there, is what we were kind of going about. Like, you know, I think we'll see more and more stuff come out, specifically cannabis research, or maybe not. The companies that are able to conduct it probably hold on to it pretty tight. But I mean, if I can, I've been so busy, and once I don't know if I'll ever be able to slow down. Hopefully that I will be able to. I'd really like to be able to do more of just the science, to be able to try to isolate those things and have them tested.
So I threw out another topic in the chat that was heat management, because I don't know if I've seen any other questions in the chat. I know Kyle has to get going in the next few minutes, so I'll pass it to him first on this topic and see if Kyle, I know that you've definitely managed some heat in probably the summertime over there, but just curious, what are your general tips for how to manage heat in your grow, as a lot of people are dealing with heat waves right now?
Well, I will say that my life has changed switching out from HPS because man, you need some serious shit when you're using those things. But now that I have LED, I mean, I just basically have I went to the local grow store, and I mean, it's a little bit of money, so it's not technically cheap home grow, but it was like, I don't know, maybe 300 or 350, but it's like, I think 14,000 BTU with and I think I said this last week too, but the key is definitely having an intake and an exhaust set up on it, not just having an exhaust. Having both is cool because it's a closed loop system too, so it doesn't really allow for outside influences to come inside and, you know, whatever, whether it be PM or something like that. But so I have that hooked up in my spare bedroom for my home grow, and I basically just have that thing set for like I think 70 or 72, and I mean, that thing just is basically on 24 hours a day, obviously, because it's extremely hot, but it does well, you know. I mean, that's just what I've been doing. And it's, you know, I have two 8-inch, so I have a 4x8 and a 4x4 in my spare bedroom, but I have two 8-inch silent AC fans, which they're really actually reasonably cost effective. They're not expensive at all. Down in the lower 8-inch hole, so that's where I'm pumping in the cool air, and then I have exhaust on the top 2 8-inch on each side of the 4x8, exhausting into a carbon filter. And that's just basically my entire setup in that room. And I just checked my thermometer and basically every day when I come home from work, and it's roughly around 78 to 80. So I would say it's pretty manageable, and they're pretty damn happy in there.
What's the high you're comfortable with temperature wise?
Well, I mean, not to like toot my own horn or nothing, but I just let them run, man. I mean, all the varieties I have been like pushed in way, because a lot of the gear I have are just things that I've brought in forward from when I first started, and they did fine in 100 and something degree temps with like no air. So I mean, they all do extremely well. But I mean, I guess if I started getting worried about stuff, probably like anything past like 95, then I have to I'm on like something needs to happen like today, like there's a problem. But I've been in the 90s. I mean, they're just loving life. I think I've said this before. Ever since I did that whole stress testing thing, which if anybody's trying to breed, again, I can't really stress enough that, just basically, if you really want a good starting position, is to really kind of mess those plants up to ensure that, the her and then the S1 progeny to see where they stand. But I mean, I haven't checked for intersex issues in a year and a half. I haven't even looked once. It's not even on my mind when I go to my tent at all. So it's just really important to do that in regards to that. But yeah, that's when I'd say around 90s. I'd probably start getting a little bit worried, and I should probably do something because they might be a little bit stressed out. But yeah, I gotta jet you guys. I really appreciate everything we're doing. Sorry for cutting it early. I'm on the East Coast, so it's a little bit later than most, but I have some things I got to do today. But yeah, my name's Kyle Breeder. If anybody wants to reach out to me, I talk to everybody: Facebook, Instagram, email. My email is predicatedbreeding@gmail.com. Again, I know you guys said that earlier. For people that don't really have social media, feel free to reach out. I talk to everybody. If you're looking for feminized seeds, I have a website. That's the letter P followed by breeding.com. And yeah, I'm really happy we're still doing this, man. I think we're close to almost 3 years or something, I think. But yeah, happy to see you guys. And we're all still doing this. And I'll see you guys next week.
Thanks again for joining us, Kyle. And definitely be sure to check out pbreeding.com if you're looking for some seeds, feminized, autoflower, some really good stuff coming out of Kyle's camp. And I remember him doing that stress testing and talking about it and a lot of the ways that he tortured those plants to make sure that he wasn't going to be sending out a bunch of Hermes. And I haven't seen any people reporting really Hermes from his genetics. And he sent them out to lots and lots of people. So that's a good measure of, testing and making sure that your gear is legit before it got into people's hands. It seemed to work out pretty well. So I'm happy for you and the people. So have a great week, and we'll see you next week, Kyle.
Peace out, Kyle.
Later, guys.
Good night, Kyle.
I know Kyle actually breeds mostly with females, so this question wouldn't have been directed really too much at him anyway. But Johnny Summertime asks, what makes a male an ideal breeder male? And I guess I could pass that to the American one, and then Brandon after that, and maybe I could toss my thoughts in after that.
I would say it depends on what your goals are, and what you really want to use it with. I got some males I want to use. I think that they're gonna help the structure out on other plants. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I have one male that, yeah, just because of the flavor, I'm going to keep it because of its uniqueness. So yeah, it depends on what you're going to use it for. So I have a lot of different reasons for wanting to keep a male. And yeah, the only way I think you can really test it is grow out the offspring. It's the only way you're going to know what the male really has to offer,
I think that's really, really solid advice. But Brandon, I'm curious what your thoughts are on males, and what do you think is an ideal breeder male?
Well, first, one of the things that I'm actually currently doing is in this last hunt, I hunted out a couple of males, and I picked the things that I personally like as far as the stature and the way they grow. And then, what I did was I narrowed it down to how vigorous were they? Because I had different, I had several different males of the same variety, just different phenotypes. So I took one of them, the one that I thought was best out of everything, and I crossed it into a couple of different varieties. So I'll run through those to see what that particular male has. I still have the progeny, the females of the best phenotypes out of the whole hunt, as out of all of the different varieties. And so I can compare through the different phenos, and the different varieties, what the male's passing on. And if I don't like it, I can go back to some of the other males that I have saved of the same varieties that I haven't used yet. So like for me right now, I hit everything with my Limelight, which is my Limarilla breeder cut times Mac V2. And it was number 22 out of like I think I started off with like 70 different phenos of that variety. I narrowed it down to two male plants that I liked, and then I used one of those males. So next time around, I could take the specific phenotypes that I pollinated, and I can hit it with a different male, and I can grow those out, and I could have something to compare them to. That makes sense, because what I did was I took like number 36, number 17, and number 27, for instance. I have those three. Those were like some of my best females of that same variety that I hit to that male to make F2s. And I'll go through all of those to test, just to do testing on them anyway. And I'll be able to see during the testing, and then I'll be able to go and take those same things. I could cross those to the next male, test those out, and see how they do the same thing. Just it when you are testing the progeny over a different varieties, you can see where the male comes in a lot. Like when with that Lime 1 male that I used from the seeds I got from Mean Gene, you can see the male side of that line come through. And it's usually one is it comes in the structure with the huge, broad, fat, wide leaves. And it also comes in with that kind of rotten fruit lime terpene profile.
Do you have any thoughts on now that you're using males? When you used to breed, you were using females, like late flower. You'd get a little bit of pollen out of it, and you're using that to breed back in like the Limarilla original cross. And those days, and Kyle often quotes that, when you're working with the two females, you actually get to see what you're getting from that female, and it makes breeding a little bit easier. In that case, in his opinion, did you have that same kind of feeling compared to working with a male, where it can be kind of a mystery until you run out the progeny?
No, it's I can hope and be like, oh man, I hope the male passes on these traits that I'm looking at, as far as like things like the stature and the height that they grow, and hoping that the best profiles that the females of that population express, hoping that it passes that on. But that's why it's a gamble, and I don't know what that is going to be. So that's why I select different males. I ran through a shitload of Black Lime Reserve. I planted 60 of those I ran through, I guess that's not a shitload, but I ran through like 60 of those, and I selected out the best 3 out of those. And, and then I kept the best, I think 4 males. I have 4 males from that population, and I haven't done anything with them. They're just sitting. I have an easy cloner that I just picked up. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to easy clone them. I'm going to take several clones of each male. That way I can cut them down, get rid of them out of my R&D box. And I'm going to start over, and I'll use each one of those progeny, because I'm looking for something specific in that black lime that is very similar to what came out when I crossed the the Purple Kush Great God into the Limarilla, which is the Death Breath that I have. And it's this, man, it just got the actual flavor. It's almost like somebody put artificial flavoring in the weed. And
It might be the same thing. I don't want to cut you off too much. It really, like in the case of methylanthranolate with the grape Kool-Aid, that grape flavoring, that is found in cannabis as well. Like that was one that literally blew my mind, because I was like, this smells just like grape Kool-Aid, and it tastes like all those grape candies, and it tasted artificial. But then when you look up artificial flavoring, it comes from nature somewhere. So like it happens to be a certain type of grape or lang-langs or whatever it is. But sorry, go ahead.
So I can smell this kind of musk in some of the varieties that that are in the Black Lime Reserve. So I picked the 3 that had the strongest profile to me, hoping that I can pull more of that out in subsequential lines, or even doing inbreed lines hitting like maybe the male to the death breath itself. And I think that my goal for because I have another one. I have the death breath times lime 1 BX that I didn't give out. I didn't give it to anybody. I didn't release it. And I'm just running through that because I'm trying to pull this specific flavor out. And it's something that I haven't really experienced it before. And it's really unique, and I really, really like it a lot. And so I'm trying to figure out exactly. And I'm not even sure it's terpene, like you said. It could be one of those other chemical compounds.
Ester.
Could be an ester. But it smells
Flavonoid
like
or something.
It smells like it tastes, which is this. It's like a tangerine grapefruit, but it has this really, really strong, sweet, pungent musk.
Like
right up
astringent, kind of. Like
It's-
grapefruits are kind of astringent.
Yeah,
Maybe.
and it's like, oh man, it's hard to describe because it's very, very pungent. It's like you smell that, you know exactly what it is. Like, oh dude, that's death breath. And it has, like I said, it tastes exactly the same way, which you don't always get a clear translation between what you smell on your nose and then what you are exhaling as the smoke. But the smoke has a full flavor to it. And that is one of the things that I'm like, dude, that's it. Like when you're smoking on a joint of that stuff, dude, you're just smoking like flavor the whole way through.
I love it when you could taste it to the very last hit. That is, to me, the sign of a good, high flavorful cannabis. And there are a few out there that definitely have that flavor all the way to the very last hit. The American one, I made you host a little bit back. I don't know if you still wanted to share the photos or not, but there was a discussion a little bit going on in the chat that I wanted to address. And I would address Smot Poker and I think it was Chad Westport. They're talking about near infrared and a little bit of discussion. We had that exact conversation like 3 weeks ago when Dr. MJ was on. Not to like say go back and listen to this other podcast, but that study that they're quoting runs way more near infrared than any of us will ever have in our room. Like even if you had security cameras on all day, you're not going to have that much near infrared. They were pumping so much of it just for the experimentation of the study, unless you're running that specific grow lighting. And the other comment was like, well, what about things that bring on photosynthesis outside of the PAR range? The BPAR concept I talked about, biological plant active radiation, has been outside the PAR range and looked at for a little while. And I'd encourage you to look at that. But the American one, I want to get your thoughts and update on this wild plant.
That's
still alive.
Cannabis right there.
Yep, it's like
That
a
looks
year
like
old now.
that looks like it's infected.
Dude, it's been around since October of last year. So this is July 30th. Here, let me go back a couple. When I put it outside, it was bigger, and then it got smaller. So like, it's June 15th. It was a midget. And then it actually got smaller. And here it is on June 16th. The sun beat it down. I thought it was going to be dead. And then I just left it out there and it continued to keep going. So I just let it keep going. And it is getting bigger. Let's see, August 6th.
Yeah, that thing's crazy looking.
It's August 19th now, this picture.
Make sure if you do any pruning to wash your scissors.
Yeah, I had it amongst all my other plants and nothing else got funky. So I don't think it's a contagious situation, but I have no idea. But
it's the butter cheese. I remember you had like a few other ones that grew perfectly fine.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. The butter cheese, which is Platinum Dosi by Cheesequake, actually.
That's a mutant in my opinion.
There's
And
definitely
I'm
something
almost-
going on there.
It almost looks like there's male flowers, but it's just so freaky. I can't tell, but yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if it was a combination of a mutant and some sort of virus, viroid, who knows?
That's very possible, but it hasn't spread to anything or any other plants or other. And even I have other plants out there too right now.
I think you're right to have isolated it and put it outside.
Yeah, I wasn't gonna leave it there.
Yeah, it's kind of stunted, right? And so like
Yeah,
just
it's been
thinking
stunted.
of just thinking from like a physiological perspective, you know, that could be a genetic mutation, that could just be that could lead to all numbers of things, like maybe a hormone issue, maybe maybe it is a pathogen, maybe it's a virus or something. But it's hard to really know. Sometimes you just get weird mutations.
Yeah.
This has become our freak sideshow of the cheap home grow. So we have to have occasional updates every month or two just to check in on it, then keep make sure if it's still alive and any pertinent updates. So
As
I'm
long
glad that
as
we
it's still
got through
alive,
that.
I'll show you what it's looking like. Yeah, it's novelty thing now. I'm not thinking it's gonna be
You're not betting your life on its yield, you're
Yeah.
gonna say?
the party. Yeah, I'm not counting on an insane amount of seeds to put me into retirement for that thing.
If you rehost me, I wanted to show a little
Yeah,
chart
we see
when
how I
Brandon
figure
was
it
talking
out right
about
now.
the esters that might show something that might trigger a thought in his mind, because it's revealed a few things to me that helped me dive down little rabbit holes to like just discover what is making the smell most likely in the cannabis that I'm consuming. But thank you, the American One, for hosting me. I will go
All
ahead
right,
and
I
share my
got it.
screen. And share. So got my little thing up over here. Let's see. Oh, I had this problem before. I don't know if it'll let me zoom. Let's see. Scroll over.
Oh yeah. See, I'm gonna have to go through some of that and see if there might be something that I could relate to it. That could be how do you get those tested, man? How do you even get esters tested? Like you'd have to find like,
HPLC. It comes right through in your HPLC if you ask for it. On top of terpenes and cannabinoids, it should
I
be
want to see if I
included.
can find a lab that can do that out here. Because it's not something that I know nobody's asking about that. I don't even know if they would.
Fucking Google Images killing me right now.
But hey, I have to go, guys. Sorry to cut out early, but I have to put groceries away and eat dinner.
Totally understandable.
So I'll see y'all next week.
All right, everybody, you can find them at rust.brandon, bokashiearthworks.com for the products if you want seeds. Brandon, before you go, he already left, but I was gonna say we had a question about the Malawi dog. Sorry about that. Sour diesel tangy. I was pushing that off. I didn't know Brandon was gonna jump out on us there, but this chart right here, this ester chart, has helped me find like pineapple smells that were in cannabis, like these things listed on the sides. It's the number of carbons. The top is also number of carbons, and it just shows a whole bunch of different basically flavors that you can find in fruit and different things. So you could go through and like, oh, that has a berry smell to it. And then you look this chemical property up, and then you can cross-reference, is that found in cannabis? And then many times there's a study or some reference that says, oh yeah, here's cannabis that was tested that has this element in it as well. So it's not just terpenes, it's not just cannabinoids, there's esters and flavonoids and ketones and aldehydes and a whole bunch of other shit that goes into it. And I think it's really fascinating, the whole science of the smell. So I'm glad that there are other people out there that appreciate it now with the cannabis and breeding perspectives. I know Brandon is breeding some really fire shit that a lot of people are liking and enjoying and buying the seeds and growing them out. So I'm glad that he was able to join us this week again. And as far as the question earlier, before we get on to some other questions about male selection, for me, I kind of, like Brandon mentioned earlier, wishfully think I have a male from a population that I have a good idea of what the females in that population looked like. So I look for the best structure from when it popped from the seed. Like, did it grow vigorously? Is it symmetrical? Is it vigorous? And mainly vigor. Good, like, is it responding well to the light? Can it handle high light, low light, things like that? Does it get really upset on transplants? Like other things like that. I try to just want an easy to grow plant, but also frost on the males. You can tend to find certain males over other males will actually have more frost, whether it's in veg or in flower. So I look for the frostiest because with the females, I'm looking for the frostiest, and it tends to have correlations, but it's not always a guarantee. I do believe crossing the male to any female you want to work with and then running out the progeny is really the only way to know. Otherwise, you're just guessing. And if you're selling those seeds, they're not tested. You have no idea, and it's your best guess. And I think a lot of people are getting conned into buying seeds like that because it's really easy to take a male, hit a bunch of females, and then you have all the seeds from that progeny. And you say, I have this cross. Like, look at my menu. They list the male up top, and then they list a whole list of females. And go check. Do they have a group of testers? Because some breeders do. You can see the people growing them out months before that they're released. A lot of breeders don't. So I would just caution people to do some research. Like, if you're going to grow them for a few months and invest your time and money into growing it, then do the research. Look at who the breeder is. Is it somebody you want to support personally as a human being, or does that matter to you at all? and what kind of reviews are they getting from other people that aren't just their own personal brand page. So be skeptical, but there's definitely a lot of really good shit in the community. So check people out. And I don't think there's ever been a better time to be growing cannabis than right now. There's so many great options. I can't even choose which seeds I want to pop next. I'm a few weeks behind because I'm like, I want to pop these. And I'm like, wait, I want to fucking pop these. I have some gear from Brandon that I really want to pop, but I have some other stuff that I paid money for. And I'm like, I don't want to just sit and get old, I've been on this hunt for pine. So got to go through these 79 Christmas bud and the pine tar kush, but it's not a bad problem to have. So I'm curious, Spartan, did you have anything other than the snow canes that you're looking forward to popping coming up?
I've always got stuff. I got so many fucking seeds, dude. First, I want to shout out Honey Bear Casey. You reminded me that on this same channel, the Hydro Hustlers is going to be airing on Wednesday. So tune in for that if you're available. But yeah, what do I have behind? So I'm going to continue. I've already said I'm going to continue to pop the V2 seeds from Snow Cane until I find something better than my Snow Cane. And then till I either run out of seeds or I don't, or I get rid of, find a keeper. And then let me see. So behind the ones, so my next ones I have are from extra from Kyle. He sent me some, so I'm gonna probably pop some of those next. And then behind that, I don't know. It may change, but I'm thinking I might pop Newberry from DJ Short. I've got those, and I'm thinking if I find a male out of that, I could work that into my Bliss bud, because that Newberry is supposed to be an anti-anxiety uplifting strain, and that's kind of the direction I'm looking for with Bliss. I was kind of thinking Newberry as a candidate for a male, to work a male in there and get vigor back. I mean, they're pretty vigorous as it is, but I just want to get a good sturdy male and to mix the genetics up in there.
DJ Short's pretty damn credible breeder to be looking for a male in the stock of, and Newberry has received some pretty good reviews from what I've seen so far. DJ's been around working on his stuff since the 70s, but publicly releasing it since the 90s. So I think that'd be a cool one to see you work with. I was going to say earlier when Brandon and Kyle were talking about the Thai high that they got, that was kind of like that longer, creepy, or like creeping. It doesn't hit you right away. It lasts like sometimes several hours. Which you don't find in a lot of modern era cannabis, in my experience. The Blue Dream had it, and one of the parents to that is the Blueberry. And so I wonder if it was more than just like the Haze parent on that. So, and DJ has talked about that for a long time, that his stuff lasts a long time. That's why he doesn't enter competitions, because it doesn't hit people right away. He won one cup and then never entered cups again, because he's like, the Blueberry is not one that is immediately appreciated. It doesn't whack you over the head with like a OG potency. So
and that cross, the male was the Blueberry too, so that's the most worked. So, and then the female was what the fuck was it? It was his Haze line. It was like blue something.
Azure Haze, maybe?
No, it wasn't Azure Haze, but it was something blue mystic or blue something like that. Was the other side of it. I just looked it up the other day. I just looked it up today, actually. I don't remember.
I should know, but that's one of his newer ones. It's literally called Newberry.
That's my loose plans. And plus, if I got some females, you know what? I'd be great to smoke some Newberry too. So I haven't had tried that yet. And those were gifted to me a long time ago by my buddy, Old Man Hermit Hash. So kind of special because of that too.
He and one of the other Michigan Bros Grow show guys met, I believe, at a DJ Short meetup. Red Setter Farm.
They both got the same pack too. They both had the Newberry. That's funny.
That's so cool, man. I actually wanted to go to one. The last one he did in California, pre-pandemic times. I heard about it, but it's a little too late. It already sold out and it came and gone. And then I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I missed it. I feel like such an idiot. And I signed up and I was like, email notifications, contacted the person at the local place. And I was like, next time he comes back, please notify me. I'll buy your first ticket. They're like, all right, great. Yeah. They come back pretty much every year. And then fucking pandemic hits. I'm like, shit, he hasn't been peeking his head out west, at least recently. So
I haven't seen him at any events. So I think he's waiting for it to all blow over before he goes back out. But I usually see him at least once or twice a year at one of the events. And I haven't seen him at all this year.
Yeah, I think he's laying low for sure. That's would be the case. I mean, these are opportunities. I was not gonna lie, I'd be willing to pay good money to go to an event like that. I don't even remember what the cost was, but it wouldn't have really mattered. I would have saved and figured out a way to fucking go, because I really wanted, after I read his book, started breeding myself, got really inspired just by like smoking his stuff, listening to him on podcasts, just getting to know about who he is as a person. I was fascinated about him and want to meet him in person someday. So hopefully I'll get the opportunity, because he is definitely older and he's been around for a long time doing it. So I hope I have the pleasure of meeting him in person someday. So, and again, if he's out there listening, or if anybody knows him, reach out to him and let him know he doesn't have to meet us in person. We could do a digital meetup if he wants to come on the Growing with My Fellow Growers. He's more than welcome on this panel. We've got several people that are big fans of growing his gear, and would definitely love to hear from him, because I haven't seen him even do online interviews or anything in a little while. So it's been a while since we've heard from old DJ Short, and he's a pretty awesome dude, so he deserves that time. But I have a good question from Law Rudy earlier. They asked, I think I have septoria on the outdoor. It looks like brown spots with rings. And Lou Rudy, maybe you could DM Sync Angel. I think that'd be the best person. Images on Instagram, potentially. That might work. Or even me, Jack Greenstock, or Cheap Home Grow. No, don't do Cheap Home Grow. They won't respond. But yeah, I think sending a photo would help. But I'm curious, Matthew, just from that description, what are your thoughts on Lou Rudy's question?
Yeah, so I mean, I could answer it assuming that it is septoria, but it does kind of sound consistent so far. There's a few different things that like a brown spot can kind of look like. So sometimes they've got like a violet halo around the brown spots. So the brown spots were like, usually the lesion is like necrotized tissue. So like the pathogen is like necrotizing the tissue and feeding on the substance that comes from that process. And so then that gets wider and wider, kind of like how a tree grows kind of like wider and wider over time. Like the living bark is in the middle, and then the more like dead cambium tree, bark and all that. So it's kind of like that, but in, I guess, reverse. So for septoria, I find that I've had people have a lot of good control with just simply cutting off a lot of the leaves to reduce like reinfection points. And also, it's helpful to see if you can find like actual evidence and signs of like mycosis. So like fungi will oftentimes at some point have like a spore phase, right? Or like not just spore, it was like sporulation, I guess. So you'll have like structures that you can like actually physically look at. Whereas like bacterial brown spot or whatever, like Pseudomonas, which is also something you might be seeing that looks very similar on the leaves, will not have that like mycelia, if that makes sense. So that's one way you can tell the difference, but it's not always available for you to tell the difference. But if you do see that, then you might know.
A good comment from Spot Poker says, leaf septoria, if I recall, is rampant on tomatoes. Don't plant close, because the question did say it was outdoor. And I do imagine a lot of growers and gardeners are planting within their other crops, maybe for stealth reasons or just because that's how they like to grow their garden. But that might be one of your issues, is check your surrounding crops or interplanted crops for issues as well that might be spreading it to them as part of your general IPM strategy. Good point from Spot Poker.
I actually agree with that. I actually want to enhance that and say that there are tons of septoria species, and they go after tons of different kinds of plants. So not only tomato, but many other plants as well could be a vector. And we don't really know the dynamics of that. But there's a lot of other like really common pathogens that are also adding cannabis to their long list of plant hosts, like botrytis, for example, certain generalist powdery mildews and that sort of a thing. So I would not be, I am not surprised that septoria and possibly even different pathovars of septoria might exist, and Pseudomonas for that matter. But to actually treat your question, culling the leaves can be helpful, but it's not the only thing. If you're not in flower, if you're in veg, utilizing like wettable sulphur, I find is really, really useful, and people don't tend to get reinfection. If it's really humid and raining where you are, I find that both for bacterial spot and for septoria, these often really enhance the reinfection when you already had the problem, and also the ingress of it in the first place. So I'm not sure if you're dealing with that right now where you are, but that could be a possibility.
I'm a big fan of sulfur in veg when you're still vegetative. Sulfur the shit out of it. That helps with lots of fungus.
Lots of everything. It kills a lot of bugs, good and bad. So if you're using beneficial predators, make sure to do that beforehand, I guess, and maybe wait a little while before applying the predators. But I know a lot of cultivators that are starting at the home grow scale, and they kind of expanded up. They've made it their business. They become breeders. Maybe they now grow for a lot of patients, or they've opened it up to a full-on business at this point. And heard several of them swear by sulfur for veg. It's pretty much their primary thing for IPM. I'm curious, Matthew, what are your thoughts on just using only sulfur in veg? And would you go for a rotation with other things, or do you think that people could get away on the home grow scale with just using sulfur during veg for general things? I guess it's, you can't ever generally to answer because there's so many places in the world that have so many different things. But
That's true. And that is my response. Essentially, it depends. But the thing is that I generally don't think it's a useful move to only rely on one product ever, basically. And especially when it comes to chemical pesticides, is it true? But wettable sulfur is kind of unique and special because it's elemental sulfur. I believe I might be wrong there actually. So don't quote me on that one. But it is
I think
true
you're
that
correct because it takes up the nutrient into the plant, and a lot of the times they like have a beneficial response, but maybe that's not directly from sulfur.
I'm pretty sure. I mean, different brands might do it differently too. So that's the other thing is that you really got to know what your actual source is and what you're using to be just 100% sure. And you got to be really fastidious in some locations more than others. But the reason why I think sulfur is a lot more, it's a lot less of a problem is because the kind of mode of action for sulfur is different from like a toxin that an insect or something can like develop a resistance to really easily. This is like being resistant to like the caustic nature of like the water mixing with the sulfur and causing like a chemical burn essentially. So it's a lot different in that way. So I think of it, and it's also cheap, which makes it really, really great as like a great kind of like a, you know, just to have like as a general spray. I think that it is useful, and I think that's kind of what you're practically asking me. But I do feel like it has a great weakness in that you can't, or I really wouldn't spray it anywhere close to like flower time for kind of obvious reasons. And then also, you know, sulfur does have some negative effects if you're not wearing your PPE. You could potentially inhale or insufflate or something the sulfur in a way that you might be really sensitive to in a way that your friend might not be. So just because somebody that you see is doing it one way doesn't mean that you're going to have the same reaction. And I know many people who have learned that they were allergic or otherwise more than the average person sensitive to certain compounds. So it's not how you want to find out, you know.
I think that's very well answered, and I agree. There is probably a benefit to most people picking up more than just one product, whatever it is, sulfur or otherwise, and doing a little rotation. But yeah, very good points there. And I had a question in chat, but I'm not going to address it because I guess I was blocked by this person. So I'm curious if Spartan or anybody else has grown their genetics, but I don't know if you guys have.
I'd like to attack the question from Honey Bear Casey, which asks, what's the best way to avoid or treat if you have that beetle stem borers? They put the subject before the question. So they're asking about stem boring beetles, and I just want to say that pretty much all stem boring insects are going to have a really difficult time for anyone for the simple fact that you are dealing with two major problems. One, they're not really reachable by anything but systemics, typically systemic pesticidal agents, which you probably don't want to apply into your cannabis meant to be smoked. The other problem is that even if you do find something that works, like maybe Beauveria bassiana gets in there, or maybe something else does, some sort of like a botanical insecticide that's not very toxic to people or that degrades rapidly or something like this. Even if you do that, if you kill the larva inside your stem, it will die and it will putrefy. And that can have problems too. You okay, Tao?
Oh, sorry. I didn't realize didn't have my mic off. Oops.
No problem.
Smoking that good.
Yes, no problems here. So that's kind of the major issue, is that even if you were to find something that could kill them, you're going to then be dealing with the problem of the cadaver afterwards. And if they're in the stem, or if they're in a branch, maybe you can sacrifice that whole branch, but that's kind of unfortunate. And if they get into your flower, it's the same kind of problem with like, budworm caterpillars. They will feed on the flower, but they die and then they putrefy and rot, and then maybe even vector, a secondary or tertiary fungal infection that may also, enjoy a plant host. So that's my kind of reaction. So to eliminate that problem preventatively, which of course is easier said, than the curative situation, I like to use those mesh nets that I keep talking about. But if you have any pictures or video of the stem boring larvae or the stem borers that you think are laying those eggs, I'd be happy to take a look at that, because maybe there's a more context dependent solution for you.
Are there any birds that eat those stem borers? I hear one squawking in the background. Maybe I heard
there's
show.
There's a great murder of crows nearby.
Yeah, so I actually was listening to a different show where a cultivator uses, I believe it's dragonfly earth medicine practices, where they try and like close all the loops and have a very natural organic cultivation setting. They mentioned that they actually liked having trees nearby, not directly over top of the cultivation, because it would block sunlight and have lots of pests. But they said having certain birds nearby actually dramatically reduced the amount of pest management that they had to take care of, because a lot of the birds actually feed on insects that would be harmful otherwise to their garden. And it's an interesting balance with the nature of the people that try and really push like the most natural. They have like interplanting lots of other flowers and things like that to attract pollinators and predators and things like that. It's fascinating to see those people that have implemented it fairly well and are able to have success year to year.
No, I think that's a really cool way to work in something that we call in ecology diffusion, which is kind of this concept that like in the environment, a plant's not going to necessarily be like ever present, although some are going to be, but basically insects have to find and locate their host. Well, if their host is diffused and dispersed into this like sea of green, right, the sea of many other plants that might look very similar, have similar shades of green or reds or yellows in their foliage, then it becomes much more difficult to locate. And so it's kind of like being evasive. It's camouflage. And I think that's a very cool thing that is useful in some circumstances. And I'd like to see more people use it where appropriate.
We had an interesting comment, at least that I found it interesting, from Dankovich, who said they used a product, Regalia. And I'm just going to read the whole comment. It says, one plot treated last year twice with Regalia before flower, not a speck of mold or PM during harvest, during flower or harvest. They said field plot that was untreated ended up with about 20 to 30% of some sort of fungus. So they were a fan of that product and had some success with it. I've also seen a lot of other people use the Marrone Bio Innovations, basically a whole suite of products. They have Regalia, I think Renovate or something like that. I'm probably mispronouncing.
Actinovate? Regalia?
Regalia. I know there's another one that's for more targeted at bugs, though.
Yeah, I think it's made by BioSafe. So like the fungicide is oh shit, I
want to say Venerate.
No.
Venerate, not Actinovate. Venerate.
What's the Xeritol? Xeritol is the one that we use from them. But we haven't used that. I can't remember what you just said 2 seconds ago. I am too high right now.
It's that sour diesel that fucking.
It's the Regalia, the one that you water in. Regalia. I've been hearing that over and over again. Some people have been having some decent results. It's kind of like a somehow boosts their immune system or something.
Yeah, it primes the immune system. It's really cool that apparently it's very common. I've met Pam Marrone myself, and I do find that in some cases they don't like, they're one of those things where they're really great as they're a great support system when used with other things. Some people get frustrated because they feel like maybe they don't work as a standalone. But I mean, honestly, no chemical or biopesticide works well as a standalone in my experience anyways. So for long enough time anyways.
That was my experience with Dr. Zymes. I was kind of using it as my standalone, and eventually found something that wasn't able to take care of. So I've started like rotating and using other products as well. Venerate is one of their products. It's a bio insecticide, is what they have it labeled as, but they have a whole bunch of products. Regalia is another one I see. It's labeled as bio fungicide used with cannabis. But like Matthew said, it's not like it's going to make you impervious to anything out there. But I have seen people have good results that are diligent about using this with their IPM. There's another one, Amplitude is bio fungicide. I haven't seen Stargus. Grand Evo is the other one, bio insecticide. That was more, I think, targeted at the actual like bugs, the creepy crawlies, the shelled things. But
Yeah.
they have a whole bunch of other products that I haven't heard of. I don't want to make this marrone bio commercial, but I have seen people, like I said, multitude of both commercial and home growers have some success with that. So I the only thing is the expenses on the higher end, but I don't think that you can really slack with IPM personally. I think it's worth the expense if it gets you to a successful harvest. Like Dankovich said, it prevented all his PM and mold in the one crop versus the other crop he lost 20 to 30%. So now that he knows that, he can do the calculations on what's losing 20 to 30% of my crop worth to me, both financially and like the emotional loss. You know, you spend all that time and money investing and growing in it. So when you go to chop it down, you've got, instead of like happy workers that are chopping out a dank crop, they're like, oh, there's like, 30% of this is now gone. And our work that we put in is like almost sort of went to waste in a sense. Some people will extract it, but it's definitely not as good as it feels to harvest some good, clean cannabis. So definitely worth considering those and other products and ways of managing molds and fungus like that.
Small caveat though, priming the immune system does steal away nutrients for growth that you would normally use for defense. But at the same time, like you said, Jack, this person still, came out with a much better crop because the primed immune system was able to deal with things when they were small and didn't let them become like much more egregious. And so the math still worked out for the priming. So even if that's true, and I'd love to see more research on this, specifically how to quantify it perhaps is important. But even if you do prime the immune system, you still probably get a net benefit.
I also really think that it can't be overstated the importance of doing stuff like Spartan, really well documented on his Instagram, like maybe a few weeks ago at this point, but how he prunes his plant outdoor so that it's not going to be overgrown so the air can move through it. And managing at a smaller scale, most home growers should be able to have the time to go through and manage your plant, at least to some extent, where it's not just completely leaf on leaf in a giant bush where no airflow can go through it. There's leaves just piled on top of one another. If you can keep it nice and clean, like he has his in that video, I think you're going to have a lot less problems with the molds and mildews. But even with that being said, circumstantially, everybody's in, like Florida, for example, it's so rainy. A lot of those people are going to have really tough times outdoors if they don't have some sort of greenhouse to keep the water off of their plants late in flower. So it is situational, but in the places that you can kind of get away with the crop, you can do a lot of things to give yourself the best chance to not run into some of those issues without using any product at all. So that is something to consider, the management. I got a DM, got distracted. I'm sorry. Spartan, we got about 5 minutes left before you got to run into Michigan Bros Grow Show. Do you have any final topics or thoughts that you want to get to before we get running? I don't want to, this isn't your sign out. I'm just curious if you have anything on your mind from this past week or this show in general.
Really, I've always got one thing on my mind. It's always in the back of my mind, and that's, protect growers' rights in your states, in your areas, get involved. So I'm going to take this few minutes and just remind people here in Michigan that on September 15th, we're going to have, there's a caregiver rally on the state capitol at noon. And I think it's a powerful statement that Steven, the man I work for at Mitten Gardens, is allowing us all, and he's going to be with us, to go down there. We're going to work a half a day and then leave it to be up there by noon. And we're going to be up there with the caregivers to throw our support You know what I mean? Because yeah, we're a commercial facility, but we don't contribute to these lobby groups because that's not what we're about. We were all caregivers, and from the hard work off our backs, we are getting it done. We don't have millions of dollars of backers who've never touched a plant in their lives. You know, we're all caregivers that have grown the plant and know the plant, and we're not about to shut the door behind us. We want more growers like us, not like these big corporate Chads and Brads and Karens. I don't want to leave out the Karens. So, you know, I appreciate the support. If you guys are out there, come say hi. We'll, you know, be happy to talk with you for sure. I don't know how much I can have any product wise or anything, because I'll technically, I don't know if they'll be considered work or not at that point. We'll probably punch out, but I don't know. Just to be on the safe side, I probably won't have much with me. So, but I will be there, and I will be in support of the caregivers, because that's just the world I want to see. So I can bitch about it, or I can try to be the change, and that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to be the change, and any support's appreciated for sure. I wrapped it up quicker than I thought I could.
No, it's all good, man. I think it's really important to remind people that just because things go legal doesn't mean the fight's over. A lot of times people, they're trying to roll back your rights, change your rights, and restrict them more often than not, and limit it to a certain pool of people who can only have access. And that's the real unfortunate thing about this all, is the fight initially was really for everybody to have access, both for medicine and just if like you couldn't grow it yourself, you have the caregiver system. And that's the back that the whole community was founded on. Before there were dispensaries and things like that, it was a few guys growing it at their house, indoor or outdoor, whatever it was, and getting it to their friends, family, and whoever needed it. And it made its way down the line to lots and lots of people that benefit a lot from it. And those people are now being left behind and actually tossed in jail in some cases. So that is the world that they're pushing for on the more corporate level. And it's important that we make the consumers and growers aware, because oftentimes we can just be in our own little bubble, like shut ourselves in. We've got to grow. Some people are growing their own food. They got their plot of land, and as long as they pay their property tax or whatever, and don't fuck around too much, the government will leave them alone. And but then there is shit like this now. You do have, they won't just leave you alone, because I think in Illinois, one of the parameters for being a home grower was that they were going to have a police officer come to your house and inspect the area. Like, like if cop has any fucking idea how a proper grow setup. Is he an electrician? No. Is he certified for cleanliness like a restaurant would be? No. There's no real benefit other than to scare the shit out of you and say, hey, look, this cop is coming over and he knows that you're going to set up your grow in this area. And if it's a little too big for them, they're going to start questioning, is that really just for you? And shit like that. So they do try to scale back your rights, and they do try to get more invasive and personal. And I do think it's worth noting that we have to be aware of what the politicians and big businesses are doing, because oftentimes they work hand in hand and they have the money to pay these lobbyists. So we got to be aware of that.
Yeah, and I guess I was being a little cryptic, I guess, but just to fill people in a few minutes, is like what we're fighting here in Michigan is there's a lobby group called the MCMA, the Michigan Cannabis Manufacturers Association, that has a lot of the biggest, we'll say the biggest as far as how much money they have and how big they are as far as size and everything, not quality, but the biggest names in cannabis. They call themselves the big three, like the big three of the car industries, because that's a big thing here in Michigan. And but there's, I don't know how many people are in this lobby group, but they've got millions and millions and millions of dollars, and they're pushing lawmakers now, still to this day, even in the summer months where they're not even really doing shit, they're still trying to shop around these proposals to lawmakers that are calling for like an 80% reduction in grow rights for caregivers, and then it's like a 75% for the for just regular home growers. So not only does it affect the medical market for caregivers, but it's affecting home growers too. So, you know, everybody likes to say, oh, I don't care, I'm not a caregiver. Well, it doesn't matter if you're a caregiver. Are you a home grower? Even if you're not a home grower, do you enjoy homegrown weed? You know what I mean? Do you enjoy liberty?
Let me give you a flashback to the fucking days of propaganda. go to Reefer Madness, go to even the last 5-10 years, listen to any of these politicians that are anti-cannabis talk about cannabis. Go to a city council meeting like I have and hear the groups that are saying that they're afraid that their kids are going to die from using marijuana, and that they're afraid that they're going to, they smell nauseous smells and there's going to be poison and the kids are going to have it in the streets, and just the fear and paranoia that these people have. So all it takes for them is to make a war against the home grow, which they're doing currently. I've already seen some of these anti-home grow lobbies. In some cases, it's the corporate growers here in California. They don't like seeing that people are growing their own and not having to go pay 60 plus per eighth. And so they're like, hey, these grows are going to catch on fire. They're selling moldy weed to their friends and they're doing this and that. And they're giving all these things and trying to scare people into taking the rights away from people that are growing for themselves. So it's in California, we have to be diligent. In Michigan, y'all have to be diligent. I think in Oklahoma, we saw earlier, I don't know if it was this year or last year at this point, but they fought Metric and didn't let Metric come into their state, which I think was a win for them. So it shows that just being diligent about these cannabis related politics. I know that we don't want to be political. Nobody wants to be fucking political until it affects you, right? So don't wait until it fucks you. Pay attention, keep your head up, and keep your eyes open. That said, Spartan Grown, I want to let you give your final thought and shout out now that we've driven that point home, I think.
Yeah, after all that, man, really, this plant's always been about love, and I experienced a little bit of that yesterday. I love going out into the community, meeting everybody, and sharing everybody's weed with each other, and just talking weed and seeing. You go to that event, it was over 90. It was blistering hot, but there was a smile on everybody's damn face. Nobody was, freaking out, and it's just the power of the plant, and I'm still riding high on those good vibes. So I'm just gonna leave it with that, with love, man. Just growers love, and I'll see you guys next week. And if you guys want to hang out with me a little bit more, I'll be on in about 15 minutes of the Michigan Bros Grow Show. We'll see you guys there. See you guys. Peace.
Thank you so much, Spartan. You can find him at Spartan Grown or spartangrown@gmail.com
Peace
if
out,
you want to hit him an
Spartan.
email. Always great having him. You can also see his commercial work at Mitten Canico. They're doing some really good stuff over there as far as the commercial market goes. But honestly, I'm most impressed by just his knowledge, his hard work, his hustle, both at his job at Mitten Canico. You could see he puts in the hard work while he's there, and at home, his home grow, he's killing it. But on top of that, he goes on shows like this for 2 hours, and then he goes on Michigan Bros Grow show for 2 hours, and he's on GML on Friday night, and he's on all sorts of other shows. He's on these UK shows. He's really putting a lot of time into the community. So I got a lot of respect for Spartan Grown and his dedication to this plant. It really shows. He's got the love and the passion, and he's all in on it. So I'm happy to see him have the success that he's having, and I'm very thankful that he's still a member of the show. So big cheers to Spartan Grown. I hope that he gets a little bit of time with his dogs. He gets to get some water and refill his tray and stuff before he goes over to the Michigan Bros Grow Show now. So cheers to him. Now we've got just the three of us. So I'm curious. I guess I'll pass it first to the American one, and then we'll go to Matthew for a little IPM update before we close out. American one, do you have any thoughts on the show so far, or general comments, questions?
Not really. We covered everything pretty good. I do think that I like biopest control, but because I have to agree that the sprays, you have to use different ones because they build up a tolerance, but I don't think they really could build up a tolerance to most insects that eat them. So that's always a thing that I think is a plus. But other than that, yeah, nothing really to comment about, or I've been busy lately, so I haven't been doing much reading.
It's all good, man. It's I'm that way right now. I'm actually a few weeks behind popping seeds for my next run. I've just been putting it off. Super busy. I need to clean up my veg space a little bit, and just I need to throw the seeds in some paper towel with some water, and then that way I'm just forced to fucking get going from that point. But yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to those pine tar kush and 79 Christmas bud coming up, and the Amy Aces that I've got in flower right now. It's a full probably 2.5, maybe almost 3 weeks ahead of the Donnie Burger next to it. So it is significantly more developed, but they're both looking good. So happy garden, happy life. I was drooling over them too much. That's why I'm distracted. I'm not popping the seeds. This always happens every time I get shit in flower. I start getting excited about it. Well, and I'm also giving more attention, just making sure everything's all right and dialed in. And I forget, I got to get shit going in veg now. So that's the way it is. But Matthew, you've got about 10 minutes left. Do you have any general comments on IPM, or have you seen any good questions that you'd like to get to that we haven't addressed yet?
There's always time for IPM, right? Let's see here. Well, I did mention the sclerotinia recently. And I do feel like, recently I was taking a walk outside, and I've been seeing, I don't know if you have as well, Jack, but I've been seeing a lot more of those sort of orb weaver spiders that are pretty common here in the southwestern North America area. I mentioned this because this is usually the first signs for me, more or less, of when the seasons are going to change from dry to less dry around autumn time, late summer, autumn time. And so if you are also sharing that seasonal change, like a lot of my friends are doing in the East Coast of North America, people are doing a lot with precipitation and humidity problems. And I want to say that despite the fact that I'm a big fan of the mesh screen that I talked about, I think last week, this week I want to say that there are some challenges and limitations to emphasize that with the mesh screens. And that's that, for example, because they're small, tiny holes, you might get a shade, you might get a little bit of shade, but that might be tolerable. And you might also deal with a humidity spike as the air kind of passes less permeably through smaller mesh holes essentially. And so you can kind of trap the humidity more that way. And a lot of people are dealing with pathogens like we said today here, so I'm kind of not surprised. Pseudomonas, septoria, sclerotinia, also some like Pythium and Phytophthora and things like this. To keep on those sorts of things, crop scout every day. Try to become familiar with the pests that you're actually going to deal with. A lot of people ask me, what's the best treatment? What's the best, they'll say like IPM spray or something like this. But really, it's the reverse of that question. It's, what are my threats? And are they where I am? And whether they are or are they not, what are those treatments that are available for me? And there are people that are creating, especially university contacts and things like this, that are doing a lot more of that research in hemp trials and that kind of a thing. So I'm super excited for the next 2 to 5 years and seeing some of this information come out a lot more. I say 2 to 5 years, even though it's been happening for a few years already, because I think that we'll get a lot more of the sort of bionomics data, multiple seasons of information and multiple year studies finalized. And of course, then they have to get published, because if it doesn't publish, who cares about it, right? Unfortunately.
No, shit goes to pre-press now. People are doing the
Yeah,
preprint
that's true.
papers and everything's getting hyped before it even gets published or peer reviewed. Not that peer review even means anything anymore, because only like 20% replicates, but not to shoot down science too much. I love it.
Oh no, well, some things, no, you make a really brilliant point. That's the other reason why I say 2 to 5 years, because some people might find some things are effective in some locations or whatever trials, and they might be less effective in others. Especially as we ramp up the complexity. If we're talking about like a sort of a chemical having an insecticidal effect, I would expect in a lot of cases for that to probably hold true in most places. But who knows? We're constantly selecting for more resistant pathogens, more resistant pests, because the resistance oftentimes already exists, and we're just killing the susceptible ones. And if we don't do that in the right way, in aggregate, that can cause the populations to only be composed of those that are particularly strong against those threats that we give them. So just always keep frosty and switch it up.
It's a good tip. I think to comment earlier a little bit about what you're talking about with the insect screening is if you are going into your setup before you're going in, just account for a little bit more of the dehumidification or airflow with that. I think would be an obvious thought, I guess. And then the other thing you mentioned was shade. In San Diego, I think the cultivation I'm going into is actually planning on using shade cloth just to get the highest quality flower generally, because during most parts of the year we get so much sun here in a greenhouse environment that actually people are finding a little bit better results with at least some shade cloth. So if it blocks a little bit of sun, that's not a huge deal. But at the same time, there's the supplemental lighting, which we will be running, at least in the cultivation I'm going to be getting into. And that can counteract some of those things. So the people out there, don't be discouraged by the few drawbacks that come with the insect net that you have to put up, but it can all be accounted for. It might be a little bit difficult, but it's definitely doable and worthwhile, I think.
Yeah,
did you have-
and
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
oh no. I don't want to bogart the conversation.
No, it's all good. I saw Tao unmuted there, but he didn't jump in, so I wasn't sure if he had anything to add.
Does he?
Yeah, I'm just having issues with my mute button. I'm gonna leave it unmuted for a little bit.
It's
I
all good,
see.
man. Yeah, there's no loud background noise or anything, so you can stay off mute.
But yeah, I think sometimes it's useful to have some shade cloth, especially in the middle of the summer for some of these plants, which would be a good thing. But yeah, towards the end is when you're really probably most beneficial or nearing the end for flying insects.
Now with the sensors, there's so much you can dial in. Like you could have a sensor on top of your greenhouse and a sensor at the canopy, and then those are communicating with your lighting system to keep a constant DLI or PPFD level, whatever you choose to go about setting. And like Brandon was talking about, he's like, "Oh, I keep my greenhouse at the minimum. It's like 74. It's like the lowest it gets to 74. Those plants are living a pretty easy, smooth life. It's
Yeah.
they can handle a lot colder. Not that it would benefit them, but they can. And so the fact that he's keeping it in a pretty ideal range for almost the entire grow with supplemented CO2 in a greenhouse with supplemented lighting, I can understand why the performance has been so impressive. And it's been so fun to watch. I like this Bicket OG has got my eye so much. I'm like, I want to fucking fly to Oklahoma after that harvest is done and like try some, because it just looks so appealing. And it's two of my strains that I enjoy a lot, GMO and cherry pie, which I think are going to make a killer combination. The people of Oklahoma are in for some really good flower there. But with no further ado, we're coming up to the 2-hour time point of the show. This is a live show that we do every week, and we'll be back next week. But if you want to find Matthew Gates, where can we find you, Matt?
You can find me in 3 major locations. You can follow the account link that you see me talking in the chat with to go to my YouTube channel, Zenthanol, where I talk about IPM related materials. You can also find me on Instagram at SyncAngel and on Twitter at SyncAngel. And I just reposted and posted on my Instagram a bunch of really cool, heady research about insect microbiome symbiosis, and explains some of the reasons why aphids and other insects are so great at feeding on plants, whether they have a high nutrient and Brix content level or not, because they literally have microbes that will make essential amino acids for them if they don't have them in their food, and also help to limit and degrade the plant immune response. So if you're interested in that research, take a look at it.
Thank you so much, as always, for joining us. It is our pleasure to have you, as always, this week. And next up, the American one. Where can the people find you? And any final thoughts?
Jack, always thank you for hosting. You always do a great job. It's good to be here every week. Good to see everyone in chat. Yeah, no last thoughts really. I just everyone keep going. And I'm the American one on YouTube, and the American one _with_Keens on the IG. And you can hit me up there, or yeah, you can hit me up on my email if you're interested. schles@aol.com will get you there. And yeah, have a great week, everybody.
Cheers. Thank you so much for joining us, the American one. And I just thought of something at the last minute here that I want to show off before I give my final sign out. It's not any of my doing. There's some person allegedly in California who wants to remain anonymous, who refers to themselves as Granny Stormcrow, who's created what's called Granny Stormcrow's List. And if you scroll down, you can just Google those words, Granny Stormcrow's List. I'll send this link into the chat, though. The really interesting thing to me is that there's more and more research. And if you look at the dates, it says 2010 to 2020. Now, these are articles which you can click on conditions and related articles. Then you can go through and say, like, if you have insomnia, you click on like go to find insomnia, and you'll find a bunch of white papers about cannabis related to insomnia and studies related to that. Then there's the endocannabinoid system and endocannabinoid system genetics, phytocannabinoids. So if you're interested in the phytocannabinoids and you want to learn more about that, you can click on there and find studies from the dates broken down, specifically 2010 to 2014, 2015 to 2020, if you're looking for more modern studies and things like that. But I'll go over to the conditions articles just for a second, because I just find this very interesting. For anybody who hasn't checked it out, I don't think enough people know about this. I think it's a great resource. So like I said, you can just go through, click on whatever letter, like if you have insomnia or some other thing that starts with an I, you can scroll through. It's not the most perfectly organized, but you can see there's tons and tons of research. And I think it's a very valuable resource to the cannabis community. And I've shared it with somebody who is seeking research about a specific topic, and I was able to find it by using this. So I wanted to help people that are interested in the cannabis specific research find it, and I think this is a great place. So shout out to Granny Stormcrow, whoever you are. If you are in California, cheers to you. They choose to remain anonymous, but they put out this great resource for everybody, and they continue to update it. So cheers to them. I am Jack Greenstock, as you'll be able to see here in just a second when I stop sharing my screen. Right behind me, Jack Greenstock, there's my logo. You can find me on Instagram primarily, or email me, jackgreenstock47@gmail.com. You can also get a copy of my book, 50 Strains of Green, on 50strains.com if you're interested. I'm also on Twitter, Jack_Greenstock. Thank you all so much for coming. It's been another fun week. I always enjoy doing this with the panel, no matter how big or small it starts off as or finishes up at. It's a great time. Enjoy these guys' company. I enjoy the chat's company. Thank you all so much for coming back. I'm going to try and get this up within the next half hour on the podcast platforms. I did that last week. That's usually my new goal. So hopefully the listeners out there that listen to the podcast will get it coming as soon as possible. But for all those in the YouTube live, thank you again for joining us. Have another great week. This is Jack Greenstock signing out. Peace and love. And for Dr. MJ Coco, Growers Love, and Aaron the Grower, send some thoughts and prayers up there to ATG Acres. He is still in the fire territory in Northern California. So, thoughts and prayers to ATG. He's a good guy. That's why he wasn't with us this week. So we missed him, but we'll hopefully see him again soon, and hopefully he stays safe and his family. So much love to him. I'll catch you all next week. Thank you.